Welcome to Podcast on TechNation. This is a series of podcasts focused specifically on the biomedical and HTM industry. Episodes will be added monthly. Listening to each episode is eligible for one CE credit from the ACI. At the conclusion of this episode, you'll be able to access a survey that will appear under this episode's title, and you'll be able to download your certificate once you submit the survey. Before we begin today's podcast, I'd like to invite you to save the date for our Spring MD Expo. We will be in Las Vegas from April the 7th to the 9th, 2024. So for more information and event details, please visit mdexposhow.com. Podcast on TechNation would like to thank our sponsor, Multi Medical Systems. When you're in the business of protecting the health of patients, you don't have time for malfunctioning medical equipment or dull surgical instruments. You need a reliable partner that can provide expert repair and planned maintenance to ensure you have patient-ready equipment that meets or exceeds OEM guidelines and regulatory requirements. Multi-Medical Systems provides these crucial elements and others such as on-demand temporary biomedical staffing, endoscope and surgical repairs, infusion pump preventative maintenance teams, and equipment sales. For more information, visit multimedicalsystems.com. In this episode, we are joined by Stephen Ellithorpe, Executive Director of Clinical Technology Services at Providence.
Welcome back to HTM Insider. I'm Chyrill with Multi Medical Systems, your host. I'm proud to say we've been doing this for over 2 years now, and today is no different. We're bringing you an industry expert once again. And with no further ado, I'd really like to introduce you to my friend, Steve Ellithorpe. Steve, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, well, thank you, Chyrill, and it's a real privilege to be here with you today. Thank you for this opportunity. And I'm currently with Providence. I'm an executive director within our Clinical Technology Services division, which is our clinical engineering and field service teams within Providence, and it's across our enterprise. And I'm really interested in this conversation with you today and bringing some 36 years of experience to this conversation. I've been a technician, I've been a manager, I've been a regional director, and I've helped provide strategies at the corporate level for clinical engineering. And so hopefully something that I have today will resonate with our listeners.
I love it. You know, Steve and I sat down at Amy, and we had kind of met here and there at a few conferences, and we happened to be at a gathering that vendors host in the evening, and I happened to get my toe stabbed by a fork, which caused all kinds of drama. But Steve and I got to sit down, and I just really found out how passionate you were about healthcare and quality healthcare and patient safety. And it really just, hit me right here. And I'm like, we need to have you on the podcast, Steve. Tell me, how many hospitals are in the Providence enterprise?
Yeah, so today there are 52 that we support across 7 states. And so it's from Alaska to Texas, including Washington, Montana, Oregon, California, New Mexico. And so a very broad footprint, and associated with those hospitals, we also have nearly 1,000 medical clinics that our teams are also supporting across the enterprise. And we should be truthful for the audience. She sat down next to me to remove the fork from her toe. So as fate would have it, right? But no, we had a great conversation, and just talking a little bit about what we were expecting from the Amy conference, and then just we started talking about our backgrounds and what we do, and so it got us to this conversation.
And just so happy you made the time to get on. You're a busy man, and I really respect that. So taking this time out of your day to impart some wisdom just means a lot to myself and the listeners of HTM Insider. So let's get started.
Awesome.
So you and I have talked a lot about the chaos in the industry right now, and everybody's feeling it, and things change every day. So navigating that chaos is going to kind of be our topic today, and how we're going to deal with it in our current environment and your experience, Steve. So what do you see as the chaos in the industry? Tell us that.
Well, there's a lot of different factors. I mean, continuing just economic and financial pressures in our environment and just investing into medical devices and even into our technicians, number one. I think number two, more connected devices. And so as the technology and clinical space continues to evolve, more and more devices are being connected. And then that leads us to this third space of, with connected devices, cybersecurity and vulnerabilities within medical devices and technical debt and legacy devices are becoming more pronounced and are happening more and more all the time, and we see stories about it in the news all the time. And I think where the chaos really is coming together for me, and especially in my role right now, is we have our IS field service teams and our clinical engineering teams and our network architecture teams and all of these groups that are coming together to work with our clinical service delivery. There is just a lot that our different teams need to understand about what we do within our specific expertise, but also how do we do it in a way that we can communicate clearly with each other to get good results at where care is being provided. And that is the part that just, you said that where my passion lies is safe environment and safe for the organization, and how do we continue to do that, which is all these opposing tensions.
I think you hit one right on the head. I mean, money,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Yeah, medical device space is a space that has lacked investment over the years, and we have very talented clinical engineering and biomedical technicians that are in the field today that they have heard this more than one time, probably this month already, is can you make it work one more year? Can we go another year? How much longer can you support it? And that has really put extra pressure on our teams and created more risk. And now we're trying to figure out and scramble, how do we remediate that, at cost effectively and efficiently so we're not disrupting care.
Yeah, and I know a lot of hospitals across the nation, I'm privileged enough to go into a lot of facilities, whether it be rural health to very large trauma hospitals. Is there an infrastructure that's part of that chaos? Is there an infrastructure even within the building, the devices, the age of devices? And with everything that's coming out right now, you mentioned the cybersecurity.
Mm-hmm.
What's the chaos that you're seeing? Because I think there's a lot there that biomedics really don't have control over, but they're dealing with the daily.
Yeah, I think it's the connectedness and the domino effect is that what we're finding as we move forward is that making a change at some point, any point within the infrastructure has impacts across the infrastructure. And so we do have legacy infrastructures as well. And so, navigating that, it's almost like as you're having these conversations and you want to do something different, you have to bring in all of those related teams to find out where is the point that you continue to remediate, update, replace, remove, whatever it is, so that you can have this standard architecture, clean architecture, remediated architecture, so that you can deploy the medical devices and connected devices in a safe way.
I mean, you look
It's
at the
big.
growth in, yeah, connectivity over the past, even, I would say 5 years.
Hmm.
Gosh, it has changed dramatically.
Yes.
When IT used to be in a totally different part of the building and they had nothing to do with biomed, right? And you have to work cohesively now. With that being said, how is that working across your enterprise with the communication between IT and
Yeah,
along?
that's a big one. That's a big one, and we've spent a lot of time on this, and I think bringing those teams together first is a a big step. And within our organization, some of the work that we're doing is actually doing a level of, I'll call it cross training, but the intent of the cross training isn't necessarily to immediately deploy these hybrid IT, clinical engineering type technicians. What it is bringing information and education across our teams so we understand when we're talking about infrastructure or connection points or encryption types or language across the internet or all of these different kind of elements, we're talking the same language, and it changes the conversation when you can sit down and you've identified terms, you're talking the same language, and you can really inform and educate across our teams better that way. I think that's something that I think if I were to go back and rewind the tape a little bit, we'd probably spend more time on that first before we started, some of the other activities. But what we're finding is that it's an onion, and you've heard this analogy many times, and there's a lot of things that you're seeing on the surface of the onion, and you're saying, well, what can we do to address that? You start addressing it and realize, well, we need to go a little bit deeper, and as soon as you pull back that first layer, you've basically peeled back to a completely new level of challenges and and opportunities, and you work through those things, and I don't think when we started this journey 12 or 15 years ago, when we were implementing medical devices, that we could have put our finger on exactly what the core was and started there and worked out. But I think that what we've been able to do is we're able to identify the challenges faster. We're able to escalate those challenges faster, and in speaking the same language, it helps us not only as we're planning, but with cybersecurity, when you do have an event, and most organizations probably will have an event, it's in how do you respond to that, and understanding common language, common terms, common devices helps get us remediated faster.
Yeah, that the cybersecurity threats are just becoming more and more prevalent, and you're hearing more about them every day. And I really feel for, some hospitals that aren't of the enterprise that you are, and maybe they're outsourcing a lot of their services, and that communication gap can be a struggle for those.
Yeah, we've yeah, Cheryl, that's a great point too, because we had some of those challenges as well. I mean, whether it's working with a vendor or working with a third party service provider, I think one of the things going back to the core is that we know more today than we did then. So then when we sit down, we can have those conversations about, as we're doing a level of work or as we're contracting for a level of work, help us gather these elements of data that maybe we didn't have, or how do we partner with them to get the information we need about connected devices. And part of this is, I'll just tell you, there's a struggle. Part of the chaos is that we're in the now with wanting to advance and wanting to accelerate to our not yet. And there is so much in the rearview mirror right now, with technical debt, legacy infrastructures, legacy devices, legacy OS, systems, all of those things. It's, how do we make those right decisions along the way between the now and the not yet, but then also as we're planning for the future state and where technology is going, as we're making decisions, do we have the right people in the room that then we can make those right decisions and make the right steps to get where we want to be? And we know that where we want to be is a moving target, but at least directionally, how do we accommodate that? And we have learned a lot. There's been a lot of painful conversations over the last 2 or 3 years, in this space, but we are getting better. We're getting better.
And you're saying like not then, not now, when. AI is another one that's coming up that
Oof, yeah.
engineering and IT, just throw that ball, toss it in there, right?
Yeah, and that's two sides of one coin. There's much good that we can get from AI in our space. And I think that's going to develop over time. It'll probably help us with greater service analytics. It'll help us automate, error management, as we're monitoring devices and things like that. It'll help us on the clinical side, right? As clinicians can see information and almost like peer review in near real time, with informed AI. The other side of that, though, is that the AI side and sophistication to develop um, phishing and cyber attacks is becoming more prolific as well. And I know that is accelerating. When you can start through AI sending out phishing attacks and cleaning up all the bad grammar and the bad sentences and all of those things that you can identify the phishing emails very easily, when that starts looking, like the real thing, and those start getting cleaned up, that's going to be a problem,
I agree. I
a
agree.
greater problem. And the other piece of that is, as more and more devices are connecting to the internet, more, the IoMT, right, Internet
The-
of Medical Technologies, and more of those kinds of wearable devices and things that are getting more access, it's just going to become more and more targets for security as well.
Oh, I mean, there's an app for it, right?
Yeah, cyber attack app, yes.
Yep. So let's switch gears a little bit because this is something that I think is causing chaos. That maybe you can impart what you're doing at Providence, but the age of retirement and the attrition rate in the clinical engineering space is prevalent. And we are not, even though we've got great schools out there, and there's more schools that are coming back online and they're teaching, and I get to talk to those people. It's amazing what people are out there doing, even with 5 or 6 students at a time. But Steve, that number that's leaving and that number that's coming in with not the experience, that's part of the chaos that we're experiencing, right?
Yes, yeah, and it's happening at a very fast rate. COVID accelerated it. There were a number of retirements, during COVID as well, which, that also added to it. But the other piece, though, is trying to catch up. It's almost like, what's the right analogy here is, you talk about book knowledge, or you just have local knowledge, right? Tribal knowledge, all of those things. I remember when I worked in hospitals, and you knew where specific devices were, and you knew where this awkward connection was, and you knew where that closet was that you could go and do the work that you needed to do, and you knew the right resources to connect with. When that tribal knowledge and that local knowledge leaves, there's no school that can connect that gap. And so these are individuals that are highly skilled, been in the field, been in the location for a long time. So it isn't just the technical skills that you lose, it's those other pieces. And so, I mean, in this space, one of the things that, we want to do, within Providence is, how do we retain our teams? How do we invest in our teams? How do we continue to redevelop that information and share the technical information across our teams and across our enterprise? And that is new for us, bringing that all together under one umbrella. We're only about 2.5 years into that journey, but investing in our teams, seeing where we can grow our teams, and then work with local colleges. And we do, in a number of our states, work with local colleges with internships, and try to place students, so they can complete those internships and give us visibility to them. We're also working with other organizations, even, veterans organizations. So individuals that are retiring from the military, or have been in the military for a few years and have training. There might be a pipeline into our organization, but it's really us having to reevaluate what is the skill set we need for these roles, how has it changed, and then trying to identify folks that can come in, can be taught, and can grow their skills or want to grow their skills in specific areas. But this is something we're chasing a little bit. I wish we were way ahead of it and just had technicians on the bench just waiting to come in. It just isn't like that, and so some of this we're catching up to.
Yeah, you're not the only one either. It's a nationwide problem, so don't feel bad.
Well,
But
we've had a number of our team members, recruited, by other
yeah.
organizations and vendors, it is just a really difficult space right now.
So along those lines, when you're saying investing, that's training,
Hmm.
right? Training takes
Yes.
time and it takes, again, money.
Yes. Yeah, I think one of the pieces that we are really investing the resource of time into right now is really looking full field across the organization and our teams, looking at what are not just the skill sets we need today, but how is this emerging for something we might need in a few years? And so, again, this is almost like the technology now and not yet, where we're identifying those things, whether we're contracting it today and where can we invest in our teams, where can we buy technology differently, right? And change the way we service our medical devices. But then with that, identify where are the schools or what are the schools locally that can get us to the not yet. Are there things that we can be working with local colleges to build skill sets that those students going through the programs right now would be prepared in 2 years for that, the not yet. And so we're it's a balancing act as we're trying to do this. And we've talked to a number of local colleges and universities about this, and they are all interested in this conversation. It's just how do we get more structure to it so that it's something that they can train to and deploy to, and we can actually be investing in with our teams.
Yeah, and fill that immediate need,
Yes. Yep.
right? And
Yes.
that's the difficult part. And I think, fortunately, I think the industry's changed around social media. We have some great allies now, like with Amy, with Danielle McGeary and
Hmm.
HTM Box, and there's other podcasts besides HTM Insider. We're getting it out there. So when someone Googles what is a BMET, what is HTM, they're finding the answers, right? If we all talk
Yes.
about it, we're able to affect, those incoming students to look at the healthcare technology field as a career. But
Yeah, and let me add to that. One of the things we're also trying to do through local biomedical associations, and I know the CMIA, they have multiple chapters across California and are trying to make those local connections as much as they can, and getting information on their websites. If you're someone that has a job, a vendor that has a job, they can be posted. If you're someone looking for a job, you can post that and make connections. And through our Northwest organizations, and I'm actually located up in the Pacific Northwest, is that through the Washington State Biomedical Association, the Oregon Biomedical Association, I know the Alaska teams have started an association here just within recent months. And so we're trying to make those connections to local schools as well, so they're not having to just connect with hospitals, but we're also connecting vendors, we're connecting ISOs and the schools, all of those things together. We're also finding wherever we can, how do we take it one step further and connect with high schoolers, right? Career days with high schoolers, something to get that word out there that this is a career field. There is opportunity in healthcare and technology, and there's lots of opportunity for it today, especially with the gaps we have with our staffing needs.
yeah, I agree 100%. So when we're talking about chaos in the hospital,
Yes.
you're talking there's so many different moving components that need to work together. So when you have nursing, you have physicians, you have equipment, you have everything from ER to ICU, right?
Hmm.
How are you navigating that as a leader at Providence for your biomeds to understand It might seem chaotic, but let's just ride this out. We're going to get there.
Oh
Everything's going
man,
to be okay.
yeah, that's a tough one, and there's elements of that that I would say are cultural. I mean, being a BMet, that's how I started my career. I spent 11 years as a biomed technician and a specialist, and then I've managing teams, and one of the things that is very cultural to biomedical technicians is that when there's a problem, that caregiver can get a hold of a biomed technician immediately. Well, when you're an enterprise, those kinds of things can create unwanted variants, and it's difficult to transition clinicians across different regions and have different methods of contacting biomed. And so one of the pieces that we have just stood up within our enterprise is an Ask CE helpline. And so now we have one way across our enterprise, whether you're a clinic or you're a hospital, there is an Ask CE number that our clinical caregivers can call. And we have worked with that help desk to really create diagnostic questions and help streamline processes so that if it's urgent, we can get connected to a technician directly. If it's non-urgent, there's a way to submit those service requests and get routed to the right teams. And if there's truly an emergency, such as a cyber event, or it's a recall that is a class one, something's got to happen right now across the enterprise, we can also leverage technology to then inform and gather our teams very quickly and bring them together to resolve an issue. And so this is something that's still developing, but it is chaotic for the caregivers in the beginning, because this isn't what I used to do, and this isn't the processes I used to have to go through. Once they make that connection, if it's a connected device, you mentioned this before, Chyrill, is that if there's infrastructure and architecture and this device and that device and those things, is if there is a problem with data, right, to the medical record or something, then how do we diagnose that question to get it directed to the right team? And this still is a work in progress. We've made great strides to make this smoother and cleaner and more efficient, but there are just so many moving parts and so many different things that can be wrong, right? From data to medical record to the device to infrastructure, so many different things. But man, I tell you, I'm grateful to have just great people I'm working with they're fully engaged, and they want this to be a better experience for our clinical caregivers, because ultimately, again, we need to provide care, and we need to do it in a safe and efficient way. And so still road to travel here, but very pleased with our journey so far.
How does that come down to your teams? Having a 52 hospital system, that communication, and so you're all managing the same, so it's across the board. How difficult is that?
It is, we desire for it to be really efficient, but I will tell you, across our enterprise, standardization in high-level technologies is something we have not attained yet, but that is one of our North Stars, is where can we bring standardization so that we can share expertise across the enterprise. Before, we've done that, through email or shared drives or, kind of our own internal wiki pages kind of thing. But we really want to accelerate that and optimize it for our teams. We're also, taking our findings that, uncontrolled variance is chaos for our teams at some level. So bringing a level of standardization where we can makes sense. And then that begins to make more sense as we integrate it to other platforms, as we're sharing data, as we're sharing technical tips and tricks and those things across our enterprise. It makes it more efficient. And we've taken some big steps through our procurement processes and seeking greater standardization. But I think our next thing that we're really looking to do is how do we have more, I guess, robust conversation with vendors to help us accelerate this as well is how do we take our North Star and have these North Star conversations with other vendors and then begin to see what other chaos can we carve out of this if we partner together, right? It'll help us be better and partner with the vendors. It'll help us be better in our hospitals.
Yeah, I think it goes back to a comment you made earlier, having the right people in the room,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether it's vendors. I mean, once we're all on the same page, if we can get on that page or relatively have a piece of that page and everyone knows that that North Star is where we're headed, I feel like the chaos can dissipate.
Yeah, and a lot of what we do today is, I mean, again, when I was a technician many moons ago, a lot of what it was done then is still done today. I mean, and there's the safety and performance and scheduled maintenance events and repair and those kinds of things. Some of the techniques and some of the manners in which things are repaired have developed over time, modular versus maybe component level, those kinds of things. But it's then all the connected pieces, whether it's, access points and Wi-Fi or telemetry or, all of these other elements and all of the other teams now that are connected just really makes this a challenge. And, my encouragement is just to, for technicians who are out there today, this is our future. Right? So how do we just continue to be informed and be educated and stay passionate about it? I mean, be curious about what's coming, because I think if you are curious, you'll ask questions that maybe you wouldn't have yesterday about tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I like it. Well, I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us on HTM Insider, and I hope listeners that this has helped you feel like you're not alone in navigating the chaos that occurs in your system, no matter how big the size of your enterprise is, or maybe you're just at a hospital by yourself. We all feel that chaos at some point, trying to keep up with technology, device integration, and just keeping the workflow going with the people and retaining our employment. If I wanted to recap, does that feel like I hit everything, Steve?
Yeah, and that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
That's
We can
and
do
that's a
after
lot. Yeah.
this.
I like what you said there, Chyrill, is because whether it is a a single hospital or a healthcare system, the challenges I think are the same. The scale might be different, but the challenges are the same.
And the number one goal is excellent patient care.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, that's what we're all here for. So
yes.
let's come to the end of our episode, Steve. And if you've watched any of them or you guys have listened before, we always ask for your wow, which is your word or words of wisdom to leave with the audience. Steve, what do you have for us today?
Well, I think what I've learned over the last 2 years and my wow or encouragement going forward would be lean in, engage this fully, because the more you know, the more you're a part of coming to a solution locally or within your enterprise. Just be curious, lean in, and grow with it. I think it'll serve you well, and it'll serve the HTM community well.
I really like that. And I think it's true. We get in silos and we think it only affects us, but you're really affecting hundreds and thousands of lives weekly, yearly, and you're an important part of the piece of what we call patient care and patient safety. Thanks again, Steve, for your time. Thanks for tuning in to HTM Insider. You know where you can find us. We're every place where you could get a podcast. Also, if you listen through TechNation, you get a CE credit for this episode. I'm at TechNation TV. We have a YouTube channel. You can find more information. Follow us. And again, thanks, Steve, for coming on.
Thank you, Chyrill.
Thank you, Stephen, for a great presentation. If you enjoyed today's episode, you might enjoy our ongoing webinar series, Webinar Wednesday. You can find a calendar of upcoming live webinars, as well as an archive of on-demand webinars at webinarwednesday.live. To obtain your certificate for one CE credit from the ACI, please remember to complete and submit the survey form located below this podcast title. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com.